We're Nate and Lindsay Pritchard, and this is a portrait of God's work in our life.
We have been foster parents for about 10 years. We have 3 children that we've adopted. Our oldest son is 15, our next son is 9, and our daughter is 6. I think there's an interesting maybe misconception when you know us now, just since we have been through infertility and struggled to have children biologically, that's probably why we went into foster care or why we ended up being adoptive parents. And I think one of the interesting pieces of our story is that's actually not the case. We decided to do foster care before we ever even thought about having biological kids. And so it's just been interesting to see that God, for whatever reason, planted that in our hearts prior to our knowledge that we weren't going to be able to have biological children. And so I remember coming home and mentioning it to Nate and being like, I think this is something we should do. We should look into being foster parents. And he was a little more maybe apprehensive or not sure at that point.
Like, okay, but that's later in our life. We don't need to do that right now.
Yeah, he thought we needed to do it after we'd parented or when we were older. And we discussed it really briefly and then, I don't know, kind of dropped it and it didn't come up again for
a long
while.
time.
Yeah. We were just really excited just to bring children into our home. Mm-hmm. So we were anticipating starting that class. And the day that we were supposed to go, I woke up and I knew that something wasn't right. And we called and went into the doctor and lost the baby that day. And of course, then weren't able to go to class and had to kind of forfeit moving forward with the foster care piece. And so that was probably, one of the worst days we've ever been through. Just so much loss from so many different arenas, I guess, and just all these dreams that we had about parenting and just wanting to have kids in our home, and then all of a sudden all of that just kind of disappeared.
But thankfully God put us in a really great lighthouse with people that really cared for us, and those people were able to grieve with us and do things like give us meals or just come over and talk, and we had some great relationships with those people that really supported us through this pretty terrible time. After the miscarriage, we decided, okay, let's finish this. And so about 3 or 4 months later, we went back through the classes. Mm-hmm. It took 10 weeks to go through, and then you got to do all the background check and fingerprints and that sort of thing. And then suddenly we're foster parents. It was a couple months later, we got a call for our first placement, and they said, hey, we have a 6-year-old that needs a home. So we did. We said yes. Within a couple hours, he's at our house, and we're like, wow, we have no food for a kid. We have no clothes. We have no toys. So you make a monster run to Walmart and figure out what you're going to do from there.
At that point, we had no idea that was going to be a long-term thing. You don't really know what the future holds. You just know that you've said yes. For now, this child needs a safe place to land. And so you say okay for however long that might be. And sometimes that can be a couple of weeks or months. For us, it ended up being forever, which I think was a surprise. Yeah, it's awesome, but I don't know that was necessarily even on our radar initially. And it's just been neat to see that just saying yes and taking that step and maybe stepping outside of what we were comfortable with or what we thought things were going to look like initially has just been the way that our family has grown, and it's been exciting.
Yeah.
I remember going to our lighthouse on a Tuesday night and being like, we know this sounds really weird, but can you just pray with us because we feel like something is coming, some kind of change, or God's going to ask us to step out in some way that's unexpected. And within the week, Nate had gotten offered a transfer with his company to a tiny town in Northwest Iowa.
And so we just said, okay, I think this is what God was saying. And then we went. Mm-hmm. And so we moved to Sioux Center. Mm-hmm. for 2 years, left our church family and our really close lighthouse here into a really stressful situation.
He was traveling a ton. We got 2 additional kids. I'm homeschooling, we don't know anyone, and we are just stressed to the max, just adjusting to a new place and a new life. But then eventually we're able to adopt those 2 kids as well. So now, we have 3 and we're a family of 5. And almost immediately, within weeks of finalizing the adoption of our younger 2, he got another call that there was a transfer option to come back. It was just so soon after that adoption was finalized that this is the part that I get choked up about, but we just felt like we came and we got our kids, and that was why God had asked us to move there. And so many things about that were not what I would have wanted. I didn't really want to move there. But then after it was over and we were back, just to look back and be like, our family was there.
What would happen if we hadn't had a pattern of saying yes? If God hadn't taught us through college or through foster care of saying yes to those types of things? God needed us to go through some of those hard things, and now we have a family that we wouldn't have had, and if God hadn't just led us to those situations. There is nothing like the church. It's God's body, and there's nothing else like it in the world. And so if we were able to connect the church to these needs and continue to see what God does, He can do amazing things. There's other stories of other communities where churches have just basically owned the whole need for foster care. And we would love to see not just our church, but other churches in the area do that, because the state really is in a crisis mode right now. There's a lot of families that are in that situation. Mental health is a big issue.
And they need foster families.
They need foster families. I guess as we look back and we see what God has done in our life, it's just have a pattern in our life, and others as well. We hope that you would have a pattern to just say yes to what God says. Just when He says something in His Word, then do it. God has a heart to meet the needs of people that are struggling, and each of us have a way we can do that, and it just takes saying yes when He asks.